our 53-man roster prediction, because we filled out every single spot, every single position, who we think will make it. Boom. Our quarterback starters, we're going to keep 2. Kirk Cousins, Nick Mullins out, Jaren Hall, and Jordan Ta'amu?
Yeah.
Jordan Ta'amu. So Jaren Hall in this does get cut. What's your thoughts on Jaren Hall? Like, I just feel like we haven't really seen enough of him yet. Unfortunately for him, he's had to play behind a third string offensive line every single preseason game. So he's been getting pass rushed like constantly, which isn't really fair to him, but there wasn't anything that has stood out for us to believe that he's absolutely going to make this team. What's your thoughts on Jaren Hall staying with the Vikings or getting cut? Or even what's your thoughts on him if we do cut him? Do you think he'll even have a chance to make it to practice squad?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give my answer, but first off, I want to let everybody know we just tossed a poll out there. Will Jaren Hall make the roster? Let us know your thoughts. My thoughts are I would love to see him make this roster, but obviously, like you said, I don't think we've seen enough from him to be able to put him on the active roster. And I think that with the way he's played, he hasn't shown too many flashes because of the offensive line, honestly. But also, I think that you could probably sneak him onto the practice squad at this point and then protect him so nobody else can poach him from you. Yeah. I think that's going to be the route they take. I mean, who knows? Maybe in this last game, if he does get out there with some better, maybe he gets out there with the second team and he lights it up, then maybe they have a more tough decision to make. But at this point, if things keep going the way they are now, I don't see anybody claiming him off waivers. So I think he'd be a guy you could easily slip down onto the practice squad. And then I know this ain't topic for this video, but yeah, you cut him and bring in and make a trade for Trey Lance from San Francisco. That's out there too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that would be an interesting one if we went after Trey Lance, which I mean, there's some people pushing it out there, the idea of getting Trey Lance, because at this point,
it was Ian Rappaport just brought up a suggestion that it could be a possibility. No sources, he didn't hear anything, he just said it makes sense.
Yeah, what about Trey? Hey,
what you will.
I'll give you my quick opinion. I say go for it, because I don't think you're going to have to pay a lot. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 5th round pick, something like that, which I would definitely take a chance on a guy like Trey Lance for a 5th round pick. Obviously, we just drafted Jaren Hall for one. So, I mean, I'm taking that chance for the price. There's a price on that for sure. Bring him home. For the right price. Let me hit these comments again real quick. Bring back Sage Rosenfeld's. Interesting take. Ought to see, but not surprising. What about Trey? Yeah, exactly what I mentioned about Trey Lance, man. I think give him a shot. Give him a shot if the price is right. Give him the shot if the price is right.
Lance be your possible start? No. You would definitely come into this team to sit behind a guy like Kirk Cousins and learn for a season. And then next year going into camp, whether Kirk's here or not, or a rookie or what have you, at least you have young options who can compete for the starting spot.
Let's jump into our number 2 spot, the running backs, fullbacks. We have 3 running backs, 1 fullback, Alexander Madison, Ty Chandler, Kene Nwangwu, and because we don't know what's going on with Kene. So no one's talking about him. No one's talking about his injury. The same thing happened with Jalen Naylor and Brian Asamoah. They both ended up going back to practice because we didn't know what's going on. Usually it's not good when everybody's being quiet about it. Kene is another guy that nobody's really talking about his injury, but by what we've seen with Brian Asamoah and Naylor, hopefully that means he's coming back soon. But if he doesn't, if he has to go on IR, that's when we're thinking Aaron Dykes, because we liked what we saw from him as a kick returner. And then of course, CJ Ham, the 1 fullback on our roster. So this is the cuts of Dwayne McBride and Amram Smith, which Dwayne McBride, we had extremely high hopes for coming in out of the draft, but so far he just didn't show enough to us this preseason in training camp. So, I mean, we got him on the cut. What's your thoughts, Casey?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I like Dwayne McBride, and I think there's a lot there, but also he did play against lesser competition, but also he's been out there behind our 3rd-team offensive line, which we saw our backups aren't even that good, so that 3rd-team offensive line is not great either. That's why in this 3rd preseason game, like, we know what we have in Nick Mullins. We know Ty Chandler can do it. So I would say put Jaren Hall, put Dwayne McBride out there with your 2nd team and see if it makes a difference. But at this point, with what we've seen, I think this is the way the running backs shape up. I don't see enough value in Dwayne McBride. And again, just like with Jaren Hall, with the way he's played, I think he's a guy you could sneak onto your practice squad. So If it's me, I'm sticking with these 4. I would rather see Dykes over Kene because Kene hasn't really impressed me as a running back. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a solid list here. Yeah, like I said, I just don't see Dwayne McBride making the roster at this point with what he's done so far.
Yeah, and there's a chance. I definitely think if he does make it through waivers, I think we put him on the practice squad for sure. Still, but let's go to wide receivers here.
Yep.
Actually, let me hit the chat real quick. What we got going in the chat?
Really interesting.
If Kwesi lets our Pro Bowl tight end go, he's getting cut. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. Defensive candidate or defensive PS candidate.
Practice squad. Yeah.
Practice squad. Oh yeah. For sure. All right, let's go to our wide receivers list. Things get kind of interesting here because there's a lot of choices here at wide receiver. So we picked 6 wide receivers. I think most people probably are at this point. Of course, Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison. There was some people didn't really know what to do with Jalen Naylor for a second there because of his injury, but he is back now. And even though we didn't get to see him in preseason, I have no doubt that he's going to be wide receiver 4 on this team. We decided, we thought, I think Jalen Reagor and Brandon Powell, they've kind of been wide receiver 1 and 2 in preseason so far, but it seems like it's going to be one or the other type of thing. They kind of do similar things, obviously both coming in for fighting for that preseason or that punt return job. And we're going to rock with Jalen Reagor. We owe him money if we cut him. So we're save money there. And I don't think Powell really showed anything much more than Jalen Reagor. And
today they each did catch a nice deep shot from
each
Kirk
did.
in their joint practices.
Yeah, and Jalen Reagor, it sounds like they've both been pretty solid in training camp, but it just sounds like Jalen Reagor might be even looking a little bit better than him, even though KOC does have good things to say about Powell. And then we're going to sneak N'Keal Harry on this list. He's had all types of hype for the Vikings in training camp. We haven't got a good look at him in preseason yet, but he did have an injury last game, which is concerning for his chance to make this team. But I do think his size brings something we don't have from the wide receiver position on this team. What's your thoughts on this, Casey?
Yeah, I think, the top 4 are top 3 are solidified for sure. Jalen Naylor, it's all pending what he does after his injury now that he's back on the field, but I think he will make the team. 5, 6, and Powell and Tristan Jackson are guys you could just toss up and put in whatever order you want. I could see if any 2 make the team and any 2 get cut, I won't be surprised at it because I think there's just too much there. I see some people in the chat saying that, maybe time to give up on N'Keal Harry, which I could get. Last game he was hurt, so obviously he didn't get to play. He had one nice catch the game before. But if Powell or Tristan Jackson really impresses these coaches, then maybe that is a decision that is to be made there. But it'll be interesting. But that's a good thing though. This team has so much depth at wide receiver, and odds are 4, 5, 6, and then the other 2 guys, whoever makes the team, probably may not even really see the field because you're going to have Jefferson, Osborne, and Addison. But you still got to have the depth there, and it's interesting. There's a lot of talent here, and who knows? Maybe they try to cut from a different position, sneak a 7th guy on there. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's a lot, man. That's a lot. Yeah. 4 first-round wide receivers. Yeah, exactly. There are 4
right.
wide receivers on that list. It's crazy.
Yeah, let me go through. Let me shout out J Jets Cards 18. What is up, Defton Vincent? What is up? Thanks for coming in, guys. We appreciate it big time. Jack Sulu, what is going on? 6 safeties. No one's keeping 6 safeties. I didn't even see that. Going to be hard to cut Powell and Tristan. I like them both. I just feel like we're not going to have Powell and Reagor both just because they're so similar. But it's definitely possible. And we like Tristan a lot. We're big Tristan guys. But if there is 7 wide receivers on this team, I would see Tristan in there, and I could easily put Tristan in here instead of N'Keal Harry. But Harry still has the draft status. Time to give up on him. That's what I'm saying. He does have the draft status, but the big one for me is just his size. It's an element we don't have on this team at all. We don't have size from a wide receiver position at all, just tight end.
And and R Peterson 20, his comment, this has been talked a lot about on over on our podcast on YouTube, GG Sports Podcast. Again, after you're done here, go check us out over there. But long-term play, what do we do with KJ? I like him, but assuming Addison hits, do we trade KJ at the deadline and let him walk next season? I think it all like you said, it all depends on, yes, we'll assume Addison ends up being what we think Addison can be because he's looked great when he's been healthy in camp.
Yeah.
I think it depends. If this year, if we're not in playoff contention and KJ is having a pretty solid season, then I think you trade him. But if we are in contention and he's having a solid season, which I think he will, because I've said it all along, I don't think he's wide receiver 2 material, but I do definitely think he's a top end wide receiver 3. really good wide receiver 3.
Yep.
But I think at this point, I think you are just going to let him walk, just because I really do expect Addison to come up and just take the wide receiver 2 job by the horns. And we hope that Jalen Naylor can step in, because Jalen Naylor has something that these other guys don't. And that is, I mean, I know obviously Addison's fast, but he's more quick fast, where Naylor has that downfield athleticism and speed. So I think Naylor would fit a piece that we just don't have here.
Exactly.
So that's why I think KJ Osborne is probably going to be an outs next year. But I mean, if he does what he wants to do this year, he's going to get paid somewhere else, and good for him if he does.
Yeah. And the chat, they ended up saying Tristan Jackson is most likely to not make it. Okay. And the one out of Jalen Reagor, Powell, and Jackson and N'Keal Harry, they have Powell as the most out of those 4 to make it. So that's interesting. That's interesting. But yeah, let's jump into the next one, which is going to be tight ends here. Let's do that. TJ Hawkins. This one's really obvious. TJ Hawkinson, Josh Oliver, Johnny Munt. Those 3, everybody knew that they'd probably make this team. Nick Muse has probably been one of, if arguably the best offensive player in preseason so far, but you can't imagine we're going to go with 4 tight ends. I think we're a little bit more worried from filling up that wide receiver position. We have there's so much talent there that unfortunately I think Nick Muse doesn't make it. And he might even get taken off the waivers, but if not, I think absolutely you bring him back to practice squad. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much a self-explanatory list. I know Kevin O'Connell's really high on Johnny Munt, many times calling him the 3rd best tight end in football. But I mean, Johnny Munt, where he doesn't have the yardage, he is nice on some of those short passing in the short passing game, as well as he's a good blocker. So yeah, I mean, I think this one basically kind of is self-explanatory. All pending TJ Hawkinson ear infection / lower back / contract / whatever injury pops up next till he gets signed. But we'll see.
Yeah, 31 fraud teams. I've actually liked Muse over Munt. I think Muse is probably a more agile offensive weapon than Munt for sure. Munt just is that big block dude, and he also can catch. He's just killer at getting first downs. I mean, he takes the little passes and just makes plays. Nothing crazy. He's not going to break a long one, but I think it's different than what we have at tight end. I think that's why we like Munt. So to our next offensive position and the last one, we go to offensive line, a position we didn't touch on as much as some other people who make some of these predictions. We got Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill, Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram. We decided to keep Oli Udoh. There's a lot of fans that are ready to get rid of Udoh, but we're going to hold on to him for now. There's just not much depth. I mean, we've been worried about what we've seen in preseason so far as depth. So I have a feeling we're going to get rid of a lot of these guys, and we're going to go try to pull some people off waivers. Hopefully we still have a chance at Dalton Reisner. Something else has to happen with this depth, I think. 7, Blake Brandel, Austin Schlottman at 8, and then Chris Reed will be on the IR. Vadarian Lowe, I guess, would be the big one that some people might consider keeping him on the roster. What's your thoughts?
I mean, again, the top, we can't have any of the main 5 guys get hurt. Or as Jay Jets Cards 18 says down here, when does Reisner come in? Really, hopefully soon. I know there's some speculation that we're going to wait till week 2 so his contract isn't guaranteed, but I just do think you got to get him in here now. But I think he's holding out for a starting job, and if we're not willing to guarantee that to him, then it's kind of, I'd have said weeks ago, bring him in and trade Ezra Cleveland, because my thoughts on Ezra Cleveland is I think he's a really good offensive lineman. Obviously, he came into the league as a tackle. But I think he's a good guard in a run-heavy offense. But when it comes to a passing offense, I just don't think he has the anchor for it, because he is more like that tackle frame. So I'd have been fine with trading him and bringing in Reisner and putting him at left guard. But we just really got to hope none of the starting 5 get hurt, because Bradbury, he ain't great, but he's better than anything else we could have had at this point, I guess. Ingram is still learning.
Brandel looked good in preseason.
O'Neill are absolute studs. And the backups, Blake Brandel has shown flashes. Schlottman's okay. And then obviously we put Chris Reed on the IR, because I think he would make the team if he wasn't hurt. But how about a good waiver wire guys for depth on the O-line? And that's the big thing too. Once these cuts get made to the 53, there's always more people looking to sign other players, because there might be a surprise cut on that offensive line. So that's a good point as well. I guess we'll see.
That's a reason why we only have 8. Other people probably we feel like we need as much depth as absolute possible, but how much depth of not very good players do you need? So we're going to keep some of that open up, and hopefully we go grab someone off of waivers that could come in and at least be a good depth piece. But it'd be nice to go get Reisner, someone that potentially could fight for a starting spot at some point. But from there, let's jump into defense here, starting with the defensive line. We got Harrison Phillips, of course, Dean Lowry, Karis Tonga, Jonathan Bullard, Jaquelin Roy, and Azezi. So we decided to keep Azezi on here. We're big Azezi fans. We've liked how he has looked since he's came in. He's shown a lot of flashes, but this is could be questionable. Some people might not have him on his roster, and I do think we need as many bodies and potential on that defensive line, because I still think, even though the interior offensive line is bad, I think our defensive interior could have even be a bigger Achilles heel for this team than that offensive line. So I think we need as many bodies there, and I like his potential. Jonathan Bullard, we had Blacklock as an option too. You see him in the out category, but you have to just feel like Jonathan Bullard's just the veteran that you kind of need on this line, other than Harrison Phillips. So we kept one of those guys here. Yeah. What's your thought?
Obviously, I was a big fan of Jaquelin Roy coming out of the draft. And yes. OTAs and preseason, or like preseason practices, I guess he was getting some run with the ones. Been a little bit dinged up as of late, but since he's been back, I heard he's been rotating in with the ones again at practice. So I think, and he's a guy, like I said it after the draft, he's a rookie that I have my eye on this year, because I know people were high on him last season. He had a little bit of a down season at LSU, but I think that, especially with how little depth we have along that offensive line or defensive line, I do think that Jaquelin Roy has a great shot to get some reps in here. And this team is really banking on Tonga playing well, because Harrison Phillips is a solid football player, and that's exactly what you need on your defensive line, is solid football players that know how to play the game. But yeah, I mean, the depth is suspect, so we really got to hope that Brian Flores has something up his sleeve for this. Yeah,
100%. 31 fraud teams, y'all killed it. Enjoy tuning in. Hey, we appreciate you being in here, man. It's big for us. Hey, at the same time, anybody in here, if you can give us a follow on here as well. At the end of the show, we'll give you guys a link to our channel or whatever. But yeah, we appreciate it big time. Welcome in, Delton. I like 8. Yeah. Maybe Blacklock instead of Bullard. I just feel like Bullard's just been more solid than Blacklock. Ever since we traded for Blacklock, it just hasn't really turned out. He hasn't looked good at all. Phillips is beast, needs more love. Lowry at 2 is tough pill. So I agree, Phillips. I wish we would have figured out something else than Dean Lowry as our third starter. I do think we won't see him on the field that often. I think with Flores, you're going to see a lot of combinations with some of these outside linebackers, which we're going to get into next year. But yeah, that's something that is somewhat concerning, because he probably isn't starting on most teams, I don't think, but he'll definitely be sticking around this year. But speaking about that outside linebackers, let's jump into that right now.
So obviously this is like outside linebacker slash edge rusher for sure.
Yeah. Pretty much. That's how, and it's really with Flores specifically, you're going to see him move these guys all over the place, which is really nice to know. But number 1, we got Danielle Hunter, Marcus Davenport, Patrick Jones II, DJ Wonham. We are going to keep Luigi Villian. We did like enough what we've seen in preseason from him to keep him on here, and we are going to keep Andre Carter around. We do think he has too much upside. He, in the beginning of training camp, he wasn't healthy. He comes back early August. He hasn't had a lot of time to practice, and he's getting up to speed. He hasn't had any sort of flash plays in preseason yet, but still, I do think there's a lot of potential with Andre Carter. We made him the highest paid undrafted free agent for a reason. We see what's going on with Ivan Pace. I think if we cut Andre Carter, I don't think he makes it through waivers. If he did, and we were able to put him on practice squad, that would be, pretty optimal, but I have a feeling we're not going to take that risk. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I see some people saying Carter gets the boot. Okay, I mean, that's interesting. It's an interesting
thought,
for sure, but I think, like you said, I think with the fact that they paid him so much to get him here, and the fact that he has all that raw athletic ability, I think if they can find a spot, I think they'll keep him. But if not, I do think there is the risk that if you do cut him, he gets scooped up by another team. Yeah. But maybe since he hasn't shown a lot, maybe it's that same deal where other teams just don't see the value in it, and they just leave him off. Because I think once you claim them off waivers, you do have to put them on your 53. So maybe there's people who don't see him 53 worthy. So I know there is a chance for sure that maybe he doesn't make it, but I just think that they're going to bet on the upside and bring him in and hope for the best. Because obviously you got to look at this where 6, it could be seen as too much, but also you have Marcus Davenport on there who, he's had injury issues throughout his career. So I think you do need to bank on that. I think Luigi Villain is one of those guys like where he has the size and he has shown flashes, but maybe he doesn't make it. He could be another one of those fringe roster guys that if they see value in another position, he'd probably be one of those guys that wouldn't make it. I don't know. But I just think with the health issues of Davenport, you got to have a little bit of extra room on your, or extra depth on the roster.
And keep in mind again, you know, this is a hybrid position, especially with Flores. These guys are going to be all over the place. They're going to be on the O-line or the defensive line. They're going to be playing standing up. They're going to be doing all that stuff. So it's kind of a hybrid position. So I mean, some of these guys might play mostly on the line for all we know. So that's why I think it's good to have a lot of OLBs and defensive linemen, just so that you can fit some of these guys, you know, next, instead of having Lowry out there and things like that. So
for sure.
Going to the next position, inside linebackers here. Let's go. We got Brian Asamoah, Jordan Hicks, Ivan Pace Jr., keeping 4, obviously, and Troy Dye. Not a ton has shown. Not a lot other than Ivan Pace. We haven't got to see Brian Asamoah or Jordan Hicks, but Troy Dye has made a couple plays in the last preseason games. We haven't seen anything from Troy Reeder, who would have been the other guy that you'd maybe think might make this team. So, I mean, there isn't much hope here, but we do need Troy Dye probably as a depth piece at this point. Otherwise, we're going in the season with just 3 inside linebackers. What's your thoughts, Casey?
Yeah, I mean, whether or not you believe the rumors that Ivan Pace Jr. has gone ahead of Brian Asamoah on the depth chart is whatever, but I think he's going to have a major impact on this team, and I think Asamoah will eventually as well. I've heard some other takes that think that Asamoah and Pace are going to be, or Hicks and Pace will be your starters, and eventually Asamoah will come in to replace Hicks. So that could be something. But I mean, I do think down the road, I mean, Hicks, I was a proponent of bringing him back just because he's not great, but he's a solid veteran presence to have, and you do need that, especially with how young this room is.
Yeah,
and
very
Troy
young.
Dye. Troy Dye has, you know, he's been here for a while, but I mean, he hasn't done a ton, but he always does find a way to make the team. D-Herc 33, you really think Reeder is out, and he is, and again, he's an O'Connell guy. Brought him, he played, played with, obviously not on his side of the ball, but with the Rams, so he could be a guy that O'Connell keeps around. But
see,
I mean, I don't know. It is. I saw someone the comments as well say it's a scary position, and it is. Like, we were hoping we'd have maybe drafted a higher profile guy. I mean, getting Pace on an undrafted free agency is amazing, but also, you know, you didn't take advantage of. I mean, I know it was a pretty weak linebacker class, but I mean, eventually you might have Asamoah and Pace as your starting linebackers, and you have 2 small, young, energetic guys. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, I with Reeder, you could definitely see him in here instead of Troy Dye. Reeder just has that. Obviously, he comes from the Rams. He has that veteran presence. He's been 100 tackle seasons and all that stuff. Just a pro's pro. So even though we haven't seen much great things out of him in preseason, I wouldn't be surprised if we did decide to keep him around over Troy Dye. And I do think Dithfop, welcome in Dithfop, but I think you make a good point here. Instead of a Wonham Carter Villian, I would not be surprised if something like that does happen, just to have a guy that is just a pro's pro. So it'll be interesting. But I do want to go back to some Pace gang though before moving on. Dude, the Ivan Pace thing is insane. Our boy Purple Rap from Purple Pocket Podcast, he was hyping him up all the way in the draft, hyped him up all the way after the draft, and to see this guy actually not only making the team but probably going to come in and contribute right away is amazing to see from an undrafted free agent. So I'm super pumped about Ivan Pace. We got a killer on that one. That was a free pick right there. All day. We love that. So let's go into the next one. Another interesting one that a lot of people are going to be looking into is cornerback. We got Byron Murphy Jr., Caleb Evans, Mekhi Blackman, Joanne Williams. We did keep Andrew Booth Jr. on the squad. And then we also snuck Najee Thompson in there because he looks like an absolute stud on special teams. Yeah, I mean, going into this, obviously some of these guys are obvious keeps on this team, but Andrew Booth Jr., we haven't seen a lot from him. He hasn't looked that great anyways. He's injured pretty much the entire season last year. But still, at the end of the day, you traded up to go grab him in the second round last year. And going into last year's training camp, he had all this hype. I don't think Kwesi's going to be ready to, whether it's a smart choice or not, ready to cut a guy with that much upside and a guy that he put that kind of capital into. So I think Andrew Booth is going to stay around specifically for that, and hopefully he can turn into what we all thought when we drafted. What's your thoughts on Andrew Booth?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tons of upside as we saw in his college tape, but again, he's been a guy that has been injured his entire career, going back to high school. So far hasn't panned on any of that potential, just hasn't been able to play. So, I mean, I think they almost keep him just because they're too afraid to just take the L on this one. But, I mean, again, if there's another spot that you really like and you want to keep another guy there, you might need to. He might be kind of one of those first out guys. And especially, and that's the thing. Once you get to that first 53, it's not the final 53 because after cuts, people make other moves. Right. So he could still be a guy that might be safe for the first round, but that second round, if they find a guy that they really like Delton says on here, Greedy Williams. Yeah, I mean, he could definitely be an option as well. I know I liked him coming out of LSU quite a bit. But he could be an option to add to that room. But I think Murphy's going to be solid. I think Evans, if he can shake the concussion thing, I think he's going to be fine. His new helmet works, which is great. Mekhi Blackman, I think he's shown a ton of promise. Juwan Williams, he's shown some flashes in camp as well. Comes from the Bill Belichick defense, so he knows how to play defense. And then, like you said, Najee Thompson's amazing special teamer. And I mean, guys go back to Patriots again. Matthew Slater has made it a complete career out of being a special teamer. You need guys like that, especially on punt gunner. But so yeah, I mean, I think this is a solid 6. Again, a ton of unknowns. So I think that's one of the exciting things about it, though, is that it's so unknown. And I think it's exciting, yet it's scary. If none of them work out, then you're going to be looking at Kwesi like, well, you should have planned for this, man. But it'll be interesting.
Right. I did see someone say something about Williams being number 3. I actually think my bold prediction is I think Mekhi Blackman takes AKAYLEB Evans number 2 at some point into the season. I like AKAYLEB Evans, but there's something about Blackman's coverage skills in a Flores scheme that I think he's going to excel. And I bet you by the end of the season, Mekhi Blackman is cornerback 2 on this team.
Could be.
But
that depends. If they want him to stick in that slot spot, then might have to.
And we'll see. There's going to be the DB group. It's going to be the DB group. Brian Murphy's looking like a stud so far. Other than that, I mean, it's going to be a question mark. We just need one of these guys to show up and show that they can be an above average starter. And I do think we have potential on AKAYLEB Evans and Blackman for that. So let's hope that's what happens. We're going to need that bad. We can't have the same type of coverage as we did last season. So let's jump into safeties here. Safeties, we're going to keep 5 here. Harrison Smith, Cam Bynum, Josh Metellus, Lewis Cine, Jay Ward. Some people might be out for Lewis Cine. People seem to be up and down about him. We feel like Lewis Cine has looked pretty good so far, other than a couple mistakes. Obviously, big mistakes like missing that tackle in last preseason game and letting Spears go off for a touchdown. But other than that, I mean, he's around the ball. People say he's missing tackles. I tell you that he's around every chance to get a tackle because he's all over the field and he has so much speed, and that's just something you don't teach. So it just shows you how much upside that kid has. And then Jay Ward, we haven't seen a ton of them. I've seen a couple good hits out of Jay Ward, but again, he's a 3rd or 4th round pick. A third or 4th early. I mean, a somewhat early pick. I don't think we're gonna let him go, and he's probably pretty good in special teams. But I don't think we're gonna give him a chance of going on waivers since we spent that kind of capital on him. What's your thoughts about this? I know you're the big Lewis. Actually, Casey is like the face of the Lewis Cine club, so I'll let him talk here.
I don't know. I have hope for him. I really do. Like you said, I think the instincts and speed are there. He's been around the ball. He's in the first 2 preseason games. Did he miss it? I mean, the first game, he got obliterated on some hits, and I'll admit to that. He did not look great there, but he was at the spot. This last game, he was at the spot, made some good tackles, overcompensated for lowering the pad level on Tyjae Spears, and he burned him for it because you are the last line of defense at a safety, so you can't miss your tackles. But he's got some time to learn, so I still have high hopes for him as well. And yes, Jay Ward, I saw a comment, can he play slot? I believe, I believe he is like that, a safety corner hybrid. So
Yep. A lot of hybrids. This defense has got a lot of hybrids on it.
Skolzik, so I don't know. That's a lot of DBs, but I feel like with how unproven they are, they kind of need them. They need depth there. So
Yep. I know it was kind of tough to create this 53 roster. And then let me go to this last page, even though I'm pretty sure it's nothing that we don't already know here, which is Greg Joseph, Ryan Wright, and Andrew. I can never say his last name.
DePaula.
Oh,
you want to talk about me in a fan club? I am a Greg Joseph stan right here. I love.
Oh
him.
yeah, he is. He is.
The extra points are frustrating, but those
Oh yeah,
game-winning
speaking
kicks,
of
man,
that,
let's go.
Speaking of that, I need everybody to answer this poll right here. I mean, maybe this is hard for any kicker, but specifically, I should have probably said like 3. Will Greg Joseph hit all his extra points this season? We got 81% says no, 19 says yes. I mean, hitting all of them is probably somewhat difficult for, I mean, I'm sure Justin Tucker's never missed one in his career, but trim and OLB, add a safety, make room for Jackson. If I say yes, the curse goes into effect. Yeah, true. Don't do it. Everyone's saying no. Everyone's saying no. Don't curse. We can't risk any curses with Vikings kickers because we've already dealt with that pretty much our whole life.
Absolutely. But yeah. Anyway, that's the GG Sports podcast here on Bleacher Report. That is our 53-man roster predictions